I understand when fans say, how come you don't spend like that? Because they think somehow we have all these dollars that the Dodgers have or the Mets have or the Yankees have, then we just keep it, which isn't true at all. Like what happens is we try to break even every year, and that's about it.
Tom, did you really say that on air? I think he probably wants those words back, but you can't have those words back. So we're going to break them down right here on the Setup Man. Setup Nation, Cubs fans, what's up? It's me, Kyle Stanley, here on the Setup Man, and I do look forward to breaking down some of these interviews. If you are new to the channel, welcome in. This is the Setup Man. I do a ton of Cubs content, especially like to break down and react to some news like what you're seeing here with the Tom Ricketts stuff going on. Please subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comments. I love hearing from you, the fans. Now, if you're looking for this to be a bash on ownership, turn around because that's not what I'm trying to do here. What I am trying to do is look at this from a very pragmatic and a logical approach from both sides because I do feel like I can have some experience on both sides of this, both being a Cubs fan and also being a owner in real estate. For those of you that have been following me for a while, you know that I have real estate businesses, Airbnb businesses, and so for that reason, I manage a lot of people. I have employees, and so I know what it's like to kind of be in this middle grounds of, hey, you have to make some clients happy, but you also have to make investors happy, which is very similar to what the Cubs are going through. You, the fans, are the clients, and then he's got these investors, he's got these P&Ls, he's got all these things going on. So he's in this middle grounds of like, I've got to make both sides happy. But, and this is the big but, you can see there's a big disconnect in the way that Tom speaks and the way that he really honestly vents on a lot of these interviews, that he's not quite connected to the fans. And so we're going to break that down. We're going to talk about a couple different interviews here. Number one is going to be from inside the clubhouse. And then number two, we're also going to hear from David Kaplan, a really good interview that he had with Tom Ricketts right before CubsCon started. And, finances and his thoughts behind what makes a good team and thoughts behind contracts, all of that is going to be talked about, and I'm going to react to it right now. So let's get to it. The very first one was a question from Bruce Levine. He basically said, hey, Tom, do you get frustrated when fans come up to you and say you don't spend money? Here's what he said.
The business model in baseball, it's worked pretty well for a long time, but there's a few things right now that just are a little out of kilter. Obviously, the Dodgers have a lot more resources naturally from smart business moves they made years ago, and so I don't begrudge them any of that. Some teams just have outside resources that are funding their player moves and acquisitions, and that's really hard to compete with. And I understand when fans say, how come you don't spend like that? Because they think somehow we have all these dollars that the Dodgers have or the Mets have or the Yankees have, then we just keep it, which isn't true at all. Like what happens is we try to break even every year, and that's about it. And I think that there's one problem, and then I think there's a competitive balance issue that gets created. But the other problem is I don't think fans should spend all their time thinking about which team has more money or how much they're spending. We should talk about players and who we draft and who we're developing, and I just think it becomes a big narrative that's a distraction. So I think the model could get better.
Feels a little bit like deflection, does it not? Hey, I understand what fans are thinking, but we're trying to break even. Also, you're focusing on the wrong things. You should be focusing on our draft. You should be focusing on yada, yada, yada. Well, at the end of the day, the draft doesn't make the big headlines. Think about it as a fan right now. And this is where, like, Tom, again, has a big disconnect from the fan, is he wants us to get excited about the draft. You know, the international pool draft just happened. I think the Cubs got, 2 or 3 of the top 15. Even me, as a person who wants to stay in the loop, that stuff doesn't excite me because that doesn't impact our team right now. Us as fans, we want now. That's never going to change. I know that's irrational. I know that when we look at a big signing of an international free agent who's 16 years old, that could be huge dividends in 2023 or beyond. But I want to know as a fan, who are you working on signing right now? If it doesn't impact the team right now, you can't ask fans to be really, really excited about it. Now, do the Dodgers draft really well? Do they have a great international signing and international scouts and yada, 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 and all those things about their organization. Yes, plus the Dodgers have a huge TV deal, which literally allows them to be a monopoly in the market and say, here's money, we don't care because we're making all this money on the TV deals. Plus, when we go to the playoffs and win the World Series, we make a ton of money there as well. Then you have Steve Cohen with the Mets, who's just like, hey, this is my little play thing, and I make all my money elsewhere, so let me just go be a huge Mets fan and make all the fans happy. Could Tom be Steve Cohen? Yes, Tom could be potentially Steve Cohen. You have to realize, too, though, that Tom is not the sole owner of this team. He's the chairman. His dad and the Ricketts family are really the owners of this team. So even though Tom looks like he's making all these decisions, he's really just the mouthpiece for the entire family. So add on top of that, all of the private equity owners. Now, if you don't know anything about that, make sure you go watch my interview with Jesse Rogers. We talked about these private equity owners. Even though they don't have any sort of feedback to Tom, that's still pressure on Tom to go produce. And I'm going to equate this to my Airbnb business that I have. The way that we manage that business is that we take on clients who want to go buy a house and they want to put it on Airbnb, but they don't want to do the work. So they have money, they want to make a return, but they don't want to do any work. That's what a private equity investor is like, that they're either a company or a person that says, here's money, we just don't want to do the work. So they've invested it with the Cubs and with the Ricketts family. Now, Tom Ricketts has his number one is to make sure that those private equity investors are making a good return. I'm sorry, fans, but that is the number one, is that he needs to make sure that the revenue that has been created or the loans that have been created to be able to fund this team have to be paid back and they have to make a return. If they don't, that's a major, major, major issue. Way more major than just upset fans. I'm sorry, but that is the case here. Then he has to say, okay, well, we need to make a really good product to be able to make the fans happy, to then make the money back for those investors. So in my Airbnb business, that's, I'm sure all of you have booked an Airbnb, you're looking for the experience, right? You're looking for the place that's close to Wrigley Field, or you're looking for the one that's themed like, the Wrigley Field Ivy. You're looking for all those great things, a great product that you'll say, hey, I'll pay money for that. The problem is there's a balance. If I go in and I say, hey, let's spend $200,000 to make your Airbnb really, really nice, and I tell them all that's going to do is increase their income by $10,000 a year, that's not a good return. For you that are good at math, that's a 5% return. 5% is not good. So what Tom has to do is he has to say, hey, well, I need to make that a 10% return, so I can only invest $100,000. And for that reason, it makes it, as a person staying in Airbnb, aka the Cubs fan, it makes it a less promising product, but it's this like balance in the middle of like, okay, I'm not totally pissing off fans, but I'm also giving investors what they need. And so for that reason, I'm able to kind of live in this like middle grounds, this gray area. Now, as the fan, we say, well, you should invest more money so it's a better product. 100%. And this is where the part of it where Tom says, hey, we just try to break even. The math doesn't math on this. If you look at Forbes, this could be incorrect, right? Forbes could be wrong on this. Forbes could be missing a number of things. I know for a fact that the numbers that you see in front of you right now, where it says that there was $216 million of player expenses, that's not correct. It was about $239 million, according to the final number that MLB put out a couple months ago. And then it says operating income is $68 million. So you round all this up to be in the neighborhood of between 300 to maybe 325, and the revenue is $506 million. Again, the math doesn't math. I know there's a lot of other things. Maybe $100 million of that goes to private equity investors. Maybe there's, money that's spread all around the family, and so it feels like you're just breaking even because only the Ricketts themselves are only making, call it, $10 million a year each. And so that feels like breaking even. For billionaires, that would probably feel like breaking even. But at the end of the day, the math shows that there's roughly a $175 to $200 million spread there. Forbes doesn't know. We don't know. So we have to temper like, okay, is he lying, or is there more to these P&Ls? And that's not my job. If you want to let me know what you think down in the comments, please do.
And then secondly, I think the other part of this is, and a little bit frustrating at times, is, we've invested more in the team and the ballpark and the neighborhood than any other owner out of their pocket in baseball. Like we came out privately financing all the renovations at Wrigley, everything we do around Wrigley Field, roughly $1 billion. And no one has that kind of financial commitment to their team. And so when I have a fan come up and say, hey, you're cheap, or you're open your wallet or something like that, I just think they're just misinformed. And it's just I think it's just the wrong way to look at our ownership.
Sorry, I was trying to see if my foot could reach my mouth because Tom's reached his. Did he mean to say that? Like, what are we talking about here? So I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt, but then he did it again.
I think that where it bothers me a little more is someone says, hey, the Ricketts are cheap. And I'm like, well, dude, we just put $1 billion into the neighborhood out of our own pocket.
This feels like a husband and a wife in an argument, and neither one of them are looking to resolve. They're just looking to win a fight. Men, your wife comes to you and says, you're working too much. You're not spending enough time with us. It feels like we're second. And you say, well, I bring in the money. I'm the breadwinner. It's the income that allows us to stay under this house, to put food on the table, yada, yada, yada. That's the issue with where Tom is coming from on this, is that we as the fans call it the upset wife that is not getting enough time with our husband. That's just, I hope you're following me on this. We just want Tom to say, hey, tell me more about that. I want to understand. Give me some more insight on where that comes from. I want to hear you, right? All the things as men. I know you're cringing right now because it's just like, no, like my wife needs to listen to me. I make money, okay? If Tom came at this of an approach, he talked about this in the David Kaplan interview of how he really enjoys being a present owner, not just sitting behind a plexiglass and not putting his face in front of the public. He likes going to Wrigley Field, into Wrigleyville, and talking to the fans and getting an understanding of where they're at. If that was absolutely true, I think the wording would be different on this. I don't think it would be the fans are misinformed. They don't understand. Look at how much money we've spent. How could you say that to us? This really frustrates me. It would be, hey, I get it. The fans have this amazing product that we've been able to put together. We've changed Wrigleyville. We've given this new bottom floor. It used to be when the last ownership was in, you knew you were the lovable losers because it was a mid-market, and we've raised the ceiling, we've raised the floor, and now the fans have had a taste of success and they want more, and I want to give that to them. So what we have to always do is we have to have this balance. We have to know, how are we going to be able to stay running as a business while also be able to make the fans happy? And there's going to be times when it makes sense for us to pour money into the team so that we can make it to that next level. But in the last few years, that hasn't been it. However, coming up, that could be the time.
The fans own the team. Like, all you do is try to manage it on their behalf.
Be a steward.
Be a steward, try to do smart things, take care of them when they show up at the ballpark, and try to deliver wins. And that's all you can do. And, and I think, I think we've done a pretty good job of delivering on a lot of the stuff we want to do. And now we have to get back to getting back to the playoffs.
Okay. That's the words are there. It is the fans who, quote unquote, own the team. I know we don't literally own the team. I understand what he means, though, is because the fans are the ones that put income into the team. They put their heart and souls into the team. And it's just our job as the owners to make sure that they have a good product. And now it's time to get back to the playoffs. So, yes, we like hearing those things. But again, the actions have to back it up. The action doesn't necessarily mean go spend money. The action is, hey, they want to know the plan. Had this been something, and this goes back to just expectations. Tom was frustrated with expectations. Well, then maybe the expectations were never actually spoken. And had that just been spoken publicly, those end of the year kind of like just thrown together letters to the fans of we're disappointed with how this season went, but hey, by the way, Ryan Sandberg and charity and yada yada, and nothing really addressing the team aside from the fact that we're disappointed with how the season went, that doesn't address an expectation to be set. An expectation to be set is the season didn't go well enough. We want to get better. We have a plan in place. It may not meet you as the fans, the expectations of spending a bunch of money, but believe us, in the next X amount of months or X amount of years, we expect this to be a World Series contending team, and we fully trust Jed to go and perform. We fully trust the organization to go scout the right players, to draft the right players, and by X date, this product will be a 90-win team, a 95-win team on paper. That's what we can at least promise you is the plan right now for this team. And I might be asking for too much. I might be asking for too much transparency. I know there's a level of transparency that is really difficult to reach as this guy in between the equity owners and the fans, but there has to be an effort to give transparency to the fans so that they know a little bit about the plan is and feel like they're heard.
The fact is, obviously, the goal is to win the World Series. That's everybody's goal. That's easy to say. But ultimately, the way you're going to win the World Series is to make the playoffs as often as possible. In baseball, if you just keep making it to the playoffs, you got a shot. It's kind of like get to the playoffs and who's healthy, who's hot, who's got the bullpen all figured out for those next couple weeks. That's going to decide who wins the World Series. Think about teams you want to emulate, like your teams that have had more consistent success, and maybe not so recently, but the Cardinals for so many years, they got in with 85-win teams, 87-win teams, and they went all the way. So or you talk about Diamondbacks just 2 years ago.
Yep.
You need to just get to the postseason.
This is very telling of where the organization's mindset is at. It's honestly, as a fan, extremely disappointing that we're trying to emulate these 85 to 87 win teams, which is essentially what he just said. He said, think about teams that you want to emulate, and he did not mention the Dodgers, the Yankees, nothing like that. He mentioned the Diamondbacks. He mentioned the 85-win Cardinals. He mentioned these teams that do not operate like a high-market team. And that in itself is very telling about why Jed makes the moves that he's making when there's a guy like, for example, Jack Flaherty out there on the starting pitcher market, and we go get Colin Ray instead. So I guess as fans, that means we just have to say, okay, well, we're just going to every year hope that the Cubs exceed expectations, which is extremely disappointing. You have an owner who's a Cubs fan who isn't cutthroat, who says, hey, we want to be the best of the best. We want to trample over all of the competition. This is an owner that says if we can just be competitive, anything can happen. And that's not fun, to be completely honest. I'll tell you what, it's a lot more fun than being the A's. It's a lot more fun than being the White Sox. It's a lot more fun than being the Detroit Tigers up until recently when they made the playoffs. It's a lot more fun than that. Can we all just admit that? It's not fun when you know that you spend just as much money as the Braves or close to the Braves, and they keep winning. And the difference is good and bad contracts because the Braves invest in their future. They don't invest in these 2 to 3 year short-term contracts for guys that have proven it. And then you also don't go and spend like the Dodgers or the Mets, who Tom straight up said in this interview, and because of time, we're not going to go into it, but he basically just said, hey, we don't like those mega contracts because at the end of those years, they're not going to be performers. And that just shows you that the Cubs, until anything changes either in Tom's mind or in this competitive balance, the CBA, this is how they're going to operate, trying to win 85 to 90 games, exceed expectations, make the playoffs as often as possible, and just hope that once they meet the playoffs, everything is just going to be unicorns, butterflies, and rainbows. And that we're all going to see Shota Imanaga throw 9-inning complete games suddenly in the playoffs, and that Kyle Tucker is going to hit 4 home runs and carry the team in the 2025 playoffs. And every single person is going to be healthy, and everything is going to be hunky-dory. And that's just such a roll of the dice. I would much rather play poker with pocket aces, pocket kings, than a queen and a 10 and hope that it works out. But I don't want to end this video on a damper mood, so let's talk about this last quote from Tom and some hope for the future.
When you have a team that you're hoping can win the division or go on to win playoffs and be a championship team, I mean, it's pretty much expected that you're going to bring in, you're going to address a need at the deadline. If it's a need that gets us over the top, or it feels like we're going to, just it's one piece of the puzzle that gets us to win the division or get deep in the playoffs, then we'll figure out the money.
John Lester, Jason Hayward. You could say Dansby Swanson fits into this. You could say Aroldis Chapman. There's a number of case studies where what he just said is truth. We, as fans, we just wanted every single day of every single free agent, of every single trade, and that's our faults, right? As a fan, we are very emotional. We don't care about the dollars and cents. We just want to see us go spend like Steve Cohen or the Dodgers. The reality is, when it's been the appropriate times, you could argue if it was the appropriate time with Dansby Swanson. I still kind of question, like, okay, coming off of an 88 loss season and now you go spend money. It was strange to me. But in Jed and Tom's minds, they spent when it made sense to spend. So that gives me hope as a fan. Now, what also gave me a little bit of hope is Tom went on to share in one of these interviews, hey, just because we offloaded Cody Bellinger's contract doesn't mean that was a salary dump. We still have a lot of offseason left, and we're not done, and we do expect to replace that income. He told David Kaplan that. So let's be patient at the same time as fans, and I know that doesn't come natural to us as fans, but it is deserved, especially when we haven't even started the 2025 season, and we want everything right now, but we need to wait to see what does the actual roster look like, and then we can make our judgment.